Sandra lay weak in hospital. Keanu's kindness never left her. The hospital room was quiet, almost too quiet. The steady sound of the heart monitor was the only rhythm that broke the silence. Sandra lay on the white bed, her face pale, her eyes half closed, fighting the weight of exhaustion. The bright daylight through the window made the room seem alive, but she felt so weak, as if her body no longer belonged to her. Outside the room, doctors walked quickly in the hallway, nurses carried charts, and machines beeped from different doors. But inside this room, time felt heavy and slow. Sandra's world had shrunk to the small space of the bed, the quiet hum of machines, and the ache of her tired body. Then the door opened softly. It was Keanu. He walked in without noise, but his presence filled the room instantly. He wore a simple black jacket and dark jeans. Nothing special, but on him it looked as if kindness itself had taken a human form. His eyes searched for her, and when he saw her lying weak on the bed, his heart tightened. "I'm here," he whispered, moving closer. He did not want to disturb her, but he wanted her to feel safe. Sandra tried to smile, but even that felt like a heavy task. Her lips curved slightly, and tears formed in her tired eyes. He pulled a chair close and sat beside her. His hands were calm, but his heart was full of worry. Gently, he reached for her hand. Her fingers felt cold, fragile, like a bird's wing. He held them with care, warming them with his own. The moment he touched her hand, her breathing slowed. She felt his strength flow through her, not in loud words or dramatic actions, but in quiet, steady presence. "You don't have to speak," he said softly. "And just rest. I'm not going anywhere." Sandra closed her eyes, and for the first time that day she felt safe. But inside her, the storm was still there. Fear, uncertainty, and the cruel thought that maybe her time was running out. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to say everything. Her fears, her regrets, her love. But the weight of weakness kept her silent. Keanu noticed. He saw how her chest rose with quiet struggle, how her lips trembled as if words wanted to come out but could not. He leaned closer, not to force her, but to let her know she was not alone. The doctors had already told him that her condition was serious. They did not use heavy words in front of her, but their eyes had spoken enough. He had heard them whisper in the hallway, discussing treatments, risks, and fragile hope. Yet here he was, not showing fear, not letting her see the weight on his shoulders. Instead, he chose to be her strength. He adjusted the blanket over her, making sure she was warm. He brought the glass of water closer to her side just in case she needed it. Every small action carried meaning. It said, "I see you, I care, I am here." Sandra opened her eyes again and looked at him. Her voice was faint, almost broken. "Why do you stay? I don't want to pull you into this pain." He smiled gently, shaking his head. "Kindness isn't about leaving when things get hard. Kindness is about staying when it matters the most. You matter, Sandra. Your pain matters. I stay because I care." His words were soft, but they struck deep inside her heart. She felt a tear roll down her cheek, not from pain this time, but from the weight of being truly seen, truly valued. For years she had been strong, carrying others, hiding her own weakness. But now, lying here, she realized there was something stronger than strength itself. Kindness. Keanu squeezed her hand lightly. "Do you remember that day on set?" he said softly. "When everything went wrong and the cameras broke down? But you made everyone laugh? You gave strength to all of us that day. Now let me give it to you." Her lips curved again, this time into a real smile. The memory touched her heart, reminding her of better days, reminding her of who she was. The room was still quiet, but now the silence was not heavy. It was peaceful. Outside, the world went on. Cars rushed, people shouted, phones rang. But in this small hospital room there was something rare. It was love without words, kindness without demand, strength without show. As the daylight grew brighter through the window, Sandra closed her eyes again, but this time she did not feel alone. She felt the steady warmth of his hand, the calm of his voice. the quiet promise that he would not leave, and deep inside, a spark of hope began to grow. The storm inside the hospital, the night outside was heavy with rain. Drops slid down the wide hospital window, catching the faint glow of street lamps. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance, making the hospital lights flicker for just a second. Inside the room, Sandra lay still, but the storm outside felt like a mirror of the storm inside her heart. Keanu had not moved from her side. Hours passed, yet he stayed there, his chair close to her bed, his hand never letting go of hers. His eyes carried the weight of long, sleepless nights, but his spirit showed no sign of giving up. Nurses came in quietly, checking her vitals, adjusting the drip, writing notes on their charts. One of them glanced at Keanu and whispered, "Sir, you should get some rest. You've been here all day." He gave a small smile and shook his head. "She needs me more than I need sleep." The nurse nodded softly. Even she felt something different in this room. It wasn't just a patient and a visitor. It was something deeper. Loyalty, love, and a bond that storms could not break. Sandra stirred, her eyes opening halfway. Her voice was weak, almost like a whisper carried by the rain. "You're still here?" "Always," Keanu replied softly. She wanted to say more, but her body betrayed her. Every word felt heavy, like carrying a mountain. She squeezed his hand faintly, and that single movement spoke louder than any speech. But as peaceful as the moment seemed, fear grew inside Keanu's chest. Earlier that evening, the doctor had pulled him aside. The words echoed in his mind. "Her condition is unstable. The infection is spreading faster than we hoped. We need to prepare for all possibilities." He had stood in the hallway, his heart sinking, his fists tightening. But when he stepped back into her room, he left the fear outside. She didn't need his fear, she needed his strength. Now, sitting beside her, he watched her eyes close again. He whispered gently, "Hold on, Sandra. Please, hold on. You're stronger than you know." Suddenly, the silence of the room was broken by the sound of the heart monitor. The beeps grew uneven, sharp, alarming. The machine's rhythm faltered and panic spread through the room. Within seconds, doctors rushed in. Nurses moved quickly, and the quiet hospital room turned into chaos. "She's crashing," one of them shouted. Keanu was pushed back gently by a nurse. "Sir, please step outside," but he refused to leave the doorway. His eyes were locked on her, his heart pounding as the doctors worked. He could only watch as they pressed on her chest, injected medicine, and shouted orders. His body trembled, but his spirit spoke one truth. He could not lose her. Not now, not like this. Minutes felt like hours. Then finally, the steady rhythm of the heart monitor returned. Weaker than before, but there, Sandra was still alive. Keanu's breath shook with relief and his eyes filled with tears. He turned his face slightly, hiding the tears from the doctors. When the room calmed again and the doctors left, Sandra lay pale, fragile, but alive. Keanu returned to her side, his hand finding hers again. He leaned close, his voice breaking yet steady. "You scared me, Sandra. But you're still here. That means you're still fighting. And if you fight, I'll fight with you." A tear slid down Sandra's cheek. Though her voice was weak, her words carried power. "I don't want to give up." Those words hit him harder than any storm could. They were not just words. They were a promise, a spark, a decision. He nodded, squeezing her hand with gentle strength. "That's all I need to hear. We'll get through this. Together." Outside, the rain began to ease. The storm clouds slowly parted, and a faint line of moonlight touched the window. It was as if the sky itself had heard her promise and given them a small blessing. Keanu stayed awake the rest of the night, his hand holding hers, his eyes fixed on her face. And in that long night, a new chapter of their story began. Not just about sickness and fear, but about courage, resilience, and the quiet power of never letting go. The quiet promise of morning, the first light of morning, crept into the hospital room, painting the walls with a soft golden glow. The storm from the night had passed, but the silence left behind felt heavy. Machines hummed quietly, and Sandra's weak breaths filled the air. Keanu had not moved all night. Dark circles sat under his eyes. His body begged for rest, but he refused. Every time Sandra's breathing changed, his heart jumped, afraid she would slip away again. When Sandra finally stirred, her eyelids heavy but awake, she saw him still there, his hand wrapped around hers. "You didn't leave." Her voice was weak but touched with wonder. He gave her a tired smile. "Not for a second. I promised you." She let out a shaky laugh, though it ended in a cough. "You always keep promises, don't you?" "Especially the ones that matter," he whispered. But inside, Keanu carried a storm of emotions. The memory of last night, machines screaming, doctors shouting, her body lifeless, still haunted him. He had seen too much pain in his life, lost too many people, but losing Sandra was a thought he could not bear. The door opened and a doctor stepped in, his expression calm but serious. He greeted Keanu with a nod and checked Sandra's chart. After a long silence, he said, "She made it through the night. That is a good sign. But her body is still fragile. The next few days are critical." Keanu nodded, but Sandra turned her eyes away. She knew the truth. She was walking on the edge between life and death. When the doctor left, the room grew quiet again. Sandra's eyes filled with tears. "Keanu," she whispered, "I'm afraid." He leaned closer, brushing her hair gently from her face. "It's okay to be afraid. I'm afraid too. But courage is not about having no fear. It's about holding on even when you are afraid." "And if I let go?" she asked. "Then I will hold on for both of us," he answered without hesitation. A tear rolled down her cheek, and for the first time she let herself cry openly. Years of hiding weakness, years of being strong for everyone else, melted in that moment. And Keanu did not judge her tears. He welcomed them, wiping them gently with his hand. Time passed slowly. The day turned to afternoon, and afternoon to evening. Outside, life went on. Children laughed, cars honked, people hurried through the streets. But for them, time was measured in heartbeats and breaths. In the quiet of evening, Sandra whispered again, "Do you remember that movie premiere when I was too nervous to step on stage?" Keanu smiled softly. "You held my hand so tight I thought you would break it," she laughed weakly. "And you whispered, 'Just be yourself.' That's enough, because it was true," he said. "You were always enough. You still are." Her eyes softened, and for a moment the hospital walls faded. It was just them, two souls sharing memories, reminding each other of who they were beyond sickness and fear. But as night fell again, Sandra's body trembled. Her breathing grew shallow. Alarms beeped once more, not as wild as before, but sharp enough to bring back the fear. Nurses rushed in, checking the monitors. Keanu stepped back, his heart racing, until finally the beeps calmed and her breathing steadied. When the nurses left, Sandra looked at him with tired eyes. "You should rest," she whispered. He shook his head. "My rest is here. With you." She wanted to argue, but her heart softened. She knew he would not leave. And, in truth, she did not want him to. As midnight came, he leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. "Promise me one thing, Sandra," he said softly. "What is it?" "Promise me you'll fight, even when it feels impossible, because I'll fight beside you every step." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "I promise." And with that promise, something shifted. It was small, invisible, but real, like a seed planted in the middle of a storm. Keanu closed his eyes for the first time in hours, still holding her hand. Sandra watched him, her heart aching with both fear and hope. The night was long, the path uncertain, but in that small hospital room, two hearts had made a quiet promise. And sometimes, a promise is stronger than any medicine. When fear met hope, the fourth day in the hospital began with the sound of footsteps. Doctors and nurses moved quickly in the hallway, their voices low but urgent. The air felt heavier than before, filled with a strange tension. Inside Sandra's room, Keanu sat by her side, his hand still wrapped around hers. His eyes were tired, but his spirit was steady. He had not left her, not even for a moment. Sandra opened her eyes slowly. Her body felt weaker, but her heart carried the weight of the promise she had made to him. She whispered, "You're still here." He smiled softly. "Always." But soon the door opened and the doctor stepped in with a serious expression. He checked the charts, the monitors, and then turned to Keanu. "We need to talk outside." Keanu looked at Sandra, then back at the doctor. "Say it here. She deserves to hear it." The doctor hesitated but nodded. "Her infection is spreading faster than expected. The normal treatment is not enough. There is a new procedure, but it's risky. It could save her, or it could fail completely." Sandra's breath caught in her chest. Keanu squeezed her hand, grounding her. "What are the chances?" Keanu asked firmly. The doctor looked down. 50-50. Silence filled the room. 50-50. The kind of chance that could break a heart in two. Sandra closed her eyes. "Maybe it's better to let go," she whispered. Keanu's heart pounded. He leaned close, his voice shaking but strong. "No, don't say that. You promised me you would fight. 50% is not failure. 50% is hope." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "But what if I don't make it?" He shook his head, his hand tightening around hers. "Then I'll know you fought with courage. But if you give up now, you'll never know what could have been." Her tears fell silently. She wanted to be strong, but fear wrapped around her like chains. Keanu brushed her cheek with his hand. "Sandra, listen to me. I've seen you lift people when they were broken. I've seen you stand tall when the world wanted to crush you. You are stronger than you think. Please, don't let fear make the choice for you." She stared at him, his eyes burning with quiet fire. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." Keanu exhaled, relief washing over him. He turned to the doctor. "Do whatever it takes. She's ready." The doctor left to prepare, and the room grew quiet again. Sandra's heart raced, but Keanu leaned closer, whispering, "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you. Because courage is not about living without fear. It's about standing even when you're afraid." She tried to smile. "How do you always know the right words?" He laughed softly. "I don't. I just speak from the heart." When the nurses came to prepare her, Keanu held her hand tighter. As they wheeled her bed toward the operation room, she looked at him one last time. "Don't leave," she whispered. "I'll be right here," he promised. He stood outside the operation room as the doors closed. His chest felt heavy, his breath unsteady. Hours passed slowly. He paced the hallway, prayed in silence, and remembered every laugh, every moment, every smile she had given him. Finally, the doors opened. The doctor stepped out, his face unreadable. Keanu's heart nearly stopped. "How is she?" The doctor sighed, then nodded slowly. "The procedure worked. She's stable for now, but the next days are still critical." Keanu closed his eyes, relief flooding through him. He whispered, "Thank you." When he was allowed to see her, Sandra lay weak but alive. Her eyes opened faintly, and when she saw him, her lips curved into a soft smile. "Told you I'd fight," she whispered. He leaned close, tears in his eyes, and whispered back, "And I'll never stop fighting with you." The machines hummed. The rain outside had stopped, and for the first time in days, hope began to breathe inside the hospital walls. When healing hurt the most, the first sunrise after Sandra's surgery filled the hospital room with warm light. For the first time in days, the brightness didn't feel heavy. The golden glow touched her pale face, making her look almost peaceful. Keanu sat beside her bed as always. His hand never left hers, and though his body was tired, his spirit stayed strong. He watched her breathing, still shallow but steadier than before. When Sandra opened her eyes, her lips curved into a faint smile. "You didn't sleep again, did you?" He gave a quiet laugh. "Sleep is overrated when you're fighting for someone's life." Her smile faded into seriousness. "You mean fighting for my life?" "Yes," he said firmly. "Yours. And I'd do it every day if I had to." She felt tears fill her eyes. She wanted to speak, but her throat was dry. He gently lifted a glass of water to her lips, helping her sip. Even the smallest act of care felt like a bridge pulling her back into life. But healing was never simple. Later that day, the doctor entered with a clipboard. "She's stable," he said, "but recovery will be painful. Her body is weak. Will need therapy, constant monitoring, and most of all, her will to keep going." Sandra listened, her heart heavy. The thought of more pain, more days in this white room, almost broke her. After the doctor left, she whispered to Keanu, "What if I can't handle it? What if I fail halfway?" He leaned closer, his eyes steady. "Then I'll carry you through the halfway. Healing hurts, but pain is not failure. Pain is proof you're alive. Proof you're moving forward." Her tears spilled. "Sometimes I feel like I'm only a burden." His voice broke as he spoke. "You're never a burden. Don't you see? The world is better with you in it. I'm better with you in it. Even at your weakest, you give me strength." Silence filled the room. She looked at him, and for the first time in days, she let herself believe his words. But the hospital was not only filled with kind voices. One afternoon, Sandra overheard two nurses outside the door. "She's so fragile," one whispered. "I don't think she'll make it through the week." Her heart sank. She turned her face to the wall, fighting tears. When Keanu returned with a tray of food, he noticed immediately. "What happened?" She shook her head. "Nothing," but he sat beside her, refusing to let it go. "Tell me," her voice cracked. "They don't believe I'll survive." "Maybe they're right." Keanu's jaw tightened. He held her hand with quiet fire. "Listen to me. People can doubt. Machines can fail. But you have the final say. You decide if you fight. And I know you, Sandra. You don't quit." She broke into sobs, but through the tears she whispered, "Then I'll fight. Not just for me, but for us." Keanu pulled the chair closer, resting his forehead gently against hers. "That's all I need." The days that followed were not easy. Every step of recovery was filled with pain. Walking even a few feet drained her. Breathing deeply felt like climbing a mountain. But every time she wanted to stop, Keanu was there, holding her hand, whispering words, carrying her when she could not carry herself, and in those small, painful victories, one step, one breath, one smile, they both discovered something deeper. Healing wasn't just about medicine. It was about love, faith, and the strength of not letting go. One night, as she drifted to sleep, she whispered softly, "Thank you for staying. I don't know how to repay you." Keanu kissed her hand gently. "Your life is the only repayment I want. Just keep living, Sandra. That's enough." When the past returned, the days slowly turned into weeks. Sandra grew stronger step by step. She could now sit up on her own, walk a little with help, and smile without it feeling like a heavy task. The hospital room that once felt like a prison now began to feel like a place of quiet victories. Keanu was there for every single one. When she took her first steps after surgery, he was the one holding her arm. When she cried from the pain of therapy, he was the one whispering, "You can do this." When she felt hopeless, he was the one who reminded her that hope was not about the end, but about taking the next step forward. But just as the light of hope grew brighter, shadows from the past returned. One morning, a visitor appeared at the hospital. It was an old friend of Sandra's, a woman she had not seen in years. Her name was Claire. She walked into the room with a polite smile, carrying flowers. "Sandra," Claire said softly, "you look fragile, but still beautiful." Sandra smiled faintly, though her heart trembled. There was history here. History she had buried. Keanu stood politely by the side, watching. As Claire sat down, her voice lowered. "You know, I always told you that you work too hard. Fame takes everything, doesn't it? Maybe this sickness is just the price of living under the spotlight." Sandra's heart sank. The words were sharp, even if spoken with a smile. Keanu stepped forward gently, his voice calm but firm. "Her sickness is not a punishment. It's a challenge. And she's facing it with more courage than anyone I know." Claire looked at him, surprised. "You're always the protector, aren't you?" Sandra's hands trembled as she whispered, "Claire, please." "Not now." But Claire's words had already struck deep. After she left, Sandra turned her face away, tears spilling silently. Maybe she's right, she whispered. Maybe this is all my fault. Maybe I burned myself out until my body broke. Keanu moved closer, kneeling beside her bed. His voice was filled with quiet fire. No, don't let her words take root. Sickness is not a punishment. It's not your fault. You are not broken. You are healing. Don't ever forget that. Her tears fell harder, but she looked at him with trembling eyes. Why do you keep fighting for me when even I doubt myself? He held her hand tightly. Because I see the real you, not the weakness, not the sickness, the heart that still beats, the soul that still shines. I fight because you are worth every fight. His words cut through the storm in her heart, but the struggle did not end. That night, as she tried to sleep, memories of her past haunted her. The long nights on movie sets, the endless pressure, the critics who always demanded more. She remembered the times she had hidden her pain behind a smile. And now, lying in the hospital bed, she wondered if she had pushed herself too far, if she had traded her health for the applause of strangers. But then she felt the steady warmth of Keanu's hand holding hers, even as he slept beside her chair. His loyalty, his presence, his kindness, it was stronger than the ghosts of her past. In that moment, she realized something powerful. Healing was not only about her body, it was about forgiving herself, letting go of guilt and accepting that she deserved love even in her weakness. The next morning, she whispered to Keanu, I want to live. Not for fame, not for applause. For me. For us. His eyes lit with quiet joy. That's the Sandra I know. But just as they felt closer to peace, the doctor entered with new test results. His face was serious. There's something we need to discuss, he said slowly. Her body is healing, yes, but the infection has left hidden damage. There is a chance it could return. The room grew cold. Sandra's heart sank. Keanu's hand tightened around hers. The battle was not over. The past was not fully gone. The real test was still ahead. Love, stronger than fear, the doctor's words hung in the air like a heavy shadow. Hidden damage. A chance the infection could return. Sandra's fragile hope trembled. She turned her eyes to Keanu, her voice breaking. I thought the worst was over. Why can't it just end? Keanu leaned close, holding her hand tightly. His voice was calm but firm. Maybe the worst isn't over, but that doesn't mean you stop living. Fear doesn't decide your story. You do. She stared at him, tears in her eyes. What if it comes back? He brushed her cheek softly. Then we fight again, and again, until there's no fight left. But you will never face it alone. That's my promise. The days that followed were filled with both light and darkness. Sandra's body grew stronger, but her heart carried the weight of fear. Some mornings she woke with energy, able to walk down the hallway with Keanu by her side. Other days she woke with pain so sharp it stole her breath. On the hardest nights, when fear whispered in her ear, Keanu was there. He would sit beside her, reading her stories, telling her jokes, or simply holding her hand until sleep finally came. One night, as the city lights glowed outside the hospital window, Sandra whispered, Keanu, why do you never leave? You could be anywhere else, doing anything else. He looked into her eyes, his voice steady, because the world is full of people who will walk away when things get hard. But kindness stays, love stays, and I will stay as long as it takes. Her lips curved into the smallest smile, and in that moment, she felt more alive than she had in months. Slowly, her spirit changed. She no longer saw herself as a victim of sickness, but as a fighter, a survivor. She began to laugh again, even through the pain. She began to dream again, even with the fear, and every step of the way, Keanu was by her side. Finally, after weeks of struggle, the doctor entered one morning with a different expression. For the first time, his face carried a smile. Your recovery has been remarkable, he said. The infection has not returned. Your body is healing. You are ready to leave this place. Sandra's breath caught. I can really go home? The doctor nodded. Yes. But remember, healing is a journey. Take it slow. Let hope guide you. Tears filled her eyes. She looked at Keanu, who smiled through his own tears. When she was wheeled out of the hospital, the sunlight felt brighter than ever. The air smelled fresher, the world felt alive again. She took her first steps outside, holding on to Keanu's arm. "I was so close to losing it all," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "But you didn't. You held on. And now every day is a gift." She looked at him with deep emotion. "You gave me the strength. Without you, I would have let go." He shook his head. "You already had the strength. I only reminded you." From that day on, Sandra lived differently. She no longer chased applause, no longer carried guilt. She chose kindness, peace, and the quiet joy of being alive. And Keanu, true to his word, never left her side. In the end, it was not medicine alone that saved her. It was the power of love, the courage of resilience, and the simple truth that kindness never abandons. As they walked out together into the golden light of a new day, Sandra whispered, "I thought sickness was my end, but now I see. It was the beginning of a new life." Keanu smiled softly, his arm around her. "And in this life, you'll never walk alone."